I'm here at Knebworth House in Hertfordshire, and wow, what an extraordinary Victorian Gothic building. 19 generations of the Lytton family have lived here, and the current custodian is an American just like me, so I cannot wait to find out what it's been like for her to live in such a magnificent historic house. When I married into the British aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But it was also a little daunting. I became a Viscountess, and for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was quite a shock. I live with my husband Luke, heir to the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset. Living in a place like this is a joy, but also a challenge. And every day we're aware that we're preserving a very special part of Britain's heritage. Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all. So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join this American Viscountess as I journey into the British countryside in search of some of Britain's finest historic houses. Knebworth House exudes romance, mystery, and intrigue with its turrets, domes, and gargoyles. The 19th century Gothic facade shields layers of architectural secrets dating back to the Tudor era. Knebworth is home to Henry and Martha Lytton Cobbold and their family. And I'm meeting Martha, also an American, who has embraced living here surrounded by British heritage, and is doing all she can to preserve Knebworth for future generations.
Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you. And to hear that American accent, it is nice, I have to say.
Absolutely. It's lovely to have another one here. Always a pleasure.
Wow.
We headed out into the courtyard so I could hear more about this amazing building.
The house is quite exceptional. The Domesday Book tells me there was a building here in 1085, but this building,
yes,
we believe was here in 1490. And it was altered by Sir Robert Lytton when he acquired the house. But it was then fortified and enhanced, and we know that he started that work around 1500. He finished around 1586.
Okay.
But it was a four-sided building that went all the way around this courtyard with an open courtyard here.
But can I then ask what happened to the other three sides?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can still see a window here, and whenever we do restoration work, we try to leave a window so you can see back to what the origins of the building were. This is the red brick Tudor building, which actually still exists in this quarter of what's remaining of Knebworth House. So the house remained largely the way Sir Robert and Roland Lytton left it in the 1500s until about 1811. You know, it was a time where the houses were just too big to manage. The estates were struggling. This was when Victorian grain was being imported.
Yes.
And the house was inherited by a young widow, Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, in 1811.
Okay.
It was too big for her. It was not manageable.
No.
She took three sides down and building some towers onto it. It didn't have the tops at this point.
Oh my gosh.
But just a few towers and the lime render to make it look a little fresher. Her son in 1843 inherited.
Right.
And he's the one that put the copper domes and all the heraldic Gothic decoration with bats and with gargoyles. So you've got all of this high Gothic Victoriana, very fashionable of its time, which was recreated on our house.
Right.
And it is very, very unique.
Yeah.
There aren't many houses like this in England.
I mean, when I walked through the gates, I was like, oh my goodness. Even during that period when that Victorian Gothic sort of revival came up, it was that period you still wanted to show off.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we go back to Robert Lytton. He needed an important house when he was working with King Henry VII. It's always been the case.
Yeah.
Now, in 1880, we had Robert Lytton, Edward's son,
Okay.
who then made further Victorian embellishments, and he built the water tower and the watchtower. And the water tower was housing the water for the entire estate, not just the house. What's quite interesting is my father-in-law reconnected it in 1970, and we used it right up until 2014.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, that's
And at that point,
extraordinary.
we were able to connect on to the mains throughout. And,
Throughout, yeah.
You know, but it was amazing.
Brilliant. Well, should we head inside?
Let's pop inside.
Whew. Gosh, it's
On a lovely brisk spring day.
it's England.
Music, literature, politics, all feature in the history of Knebworth. From the record-breaking rock concerts held in the park, to royal visits, to the literary genius of members of the Lytton family, each generation has contributed to its rich tapestry of history.
So this banqueting hall is just so majestic and so wonderful. And this is part of the original Tudor house. The property was acquired in 1490 by Robert Lytton. Because of his work, he was able to purchase this property and to alter the structure.
Right.
Robert will have taken oak beams from the estate to create this extraordinary ceiling.
In one sense, you almost look to him as kind of like the founding father
Absolutely.
of Knebworth.
Certainly the founding Lytton father.
Right.
And it's the Lytton family who have been here for over 500 years. It has passed through the female line a few times.
Yeah.
And the name Lytton keeps getting pulled back in.
Right, right.
But he is our founding father.
How wonderful.
As you were saying earlier, it was a time for showing off and showing prestige and showing, you know, here we are on the top of the hill in the great county of Hertfordshire. We did have Queen Elizabeth the first come to visit. We did. And in fact, we've had Queen Elizabeth II come to visit too. But you know, that is what these houses are for.
Yes.
Many generations later, Edward Bulwer-Lytton and Charles Dickens used to perform in this room. The acoustics are really very good. I won't sing for you.
You can if you want to, Martha.
We've had some extraordinary people come in and sing, and the acoustics are fantastic. The Minstrels Gallery up here can
I was
be
about
used.
to say, this is just brilliant
We've
there.
reenacted Christmas Carol theatrical readings here in front of the fireplace, and we've had local community choir groups come in and perform. And Edward Bulwer-Lytton's welcoming poem, "Read the reed of this old roof tree, here be trust safe, opinion free. Knightly right hand, Christian knee, worth in all, wit in some, laughter open, slander dumb. Hearth where rooted friendships grow, safe as altar even to foe. Home where chivalry and grace cradle a high-hearted race. If thy sap in these may be, fear no winter, old roof tree." So you can come and speak your mind. All are welcome.
It's wonderful.
You get visitors who come because of the tourism link with filming, or the tourism link with history and heritage, or the literature connection, or the women, or there's all sorts of things.
It's like what you said, Martha, it broadens your market because we're always looking to widen sort of the net in order to bring more people in.
But it is first and foremost a family home.
Yeah.
And that is part of what our visitors really enjoy seeing and experiencing. This is our family home. So we come from the Jacobean banqueting hall into the white dining parlour.
Yes,
And
light, bright.
It is now, but it didn't used to be. It had a much heavier Victorian look about it, with very heavy wall coverings and paintings and ceiling paintings. But at the time, that was considered very heavy and very dated.
Yes.
You know, much of the furniture kept because the Victorians kept the curtains pulled. And you move from the white dining parlour into a Victorian library. And let me just shut the door behind you because it gives the illusion of being completely encapsulated by the library.
Brilliant.
But it is an amazingly beautiful and rich room. When Edward Bulwer-Lytton moved here with his mother, he was a young boy, and he had visited and experienced his grandfather's collection. His grandfather had a world-renowned library.
Right, of course.
They sold it They couldn't afford to keep, there wasn't very much here
Right.
anyway when Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton moved here as a young widow. But they had to liquidate to raise the funds to simplify and modernize the house to make it a family home. And the library was sold. Her son Edward became a prolific writer. He wrote poetry, he wrote plays, and he wrote novels. And he more or less filled his own library.
Oh my goodness.
And this wall here are all of his novels.
I guess he must feel he brought the library back to life.
And what's interesting
And he's
is
very
Robert,
protective of
his
it.
son, this is Robert, very handsome man above the
Yes.
fireplace. And Robert was a very accomplished man in his own right too. He loved writing. He wrote many poems under the name Owen Meredith, very popular in America. Many of
my
our
goodness,
ancestors would have had
yes.
Owen Meredith on their bookcases. But he was asked by his father to publish under that name because he didn't want the competition. So yes, he filled the library, and yes, he did many wonderful, wonderful things, but he was also a man of great pride.
Right. He had sort of claimed his fame
Yes.
and
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that...
He was the poet.
Yeah. He was the poet.
He was the poet. But
How
Robert
interesting.
wrote some beautiful things.
And did he marry and have children?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
did.
married Edith Villiers.
Okay.
And they had a very large family, 3 beautiful girls. Constance Lytton is a very famous suffragette.
And that's one of his
Yes.
daughters. How...
And Robert's son, Victor, is the Lytton line here.
Here. This is what's so wonderful. When the public comes to these historic houses, they get to see all of these generations that have lived here.
Yeah.
This is the stuff I want to see as a
Absolutely.
visitor.
And people love the family photographs. So this takes us through into the armory. And this is a particularly interesting area of the house because this is the exterior wall of the original Tudor house. And you can see the very traditional diamond brickwork there. And they would make the darker bricks by burning them and then use it as part of the decoration. And again, we wanted to leave a little window back into the history.
Goodness.
But when this was altered by an architect called Biagio Rebecca for
Okay.
Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, they realized they didn't have a grand staircase to go upstairs. And so this was bumped out.
I see.
And you created this, this beautiful...
So she built this.
Yeah.
Did you discover
Yeah.
that?
During restoration, and we're always doing restoration. There's always something that needs doing.
You've discovered
And
quite
one
a
of
lot
the
so
things-
far. I've only been in 3
Absolutely.
rooms.
Exactly. And what you know, it's always something that will get started, and sometimes for whatever reason it doesn't get finished. And we recently just finished the whole of the ceiling in the last year. Many of the wooden strats were failing. In fact, we got the whole tower scaffold, which you can imagine at this height up there. My colleague called me, which he loves doing, and say, "Guess what I found?" And the strap was held on by 1 nail. And we have visitors coming in here.
No.
You just cannot imagine. And so that was immediately repaired, and these beautiful carvings were reinstated. It gave us the opportunity to do further restoration on the archways. The wooden paneling that we've got here, this is actually part of a film set.
Is it?
We were being filmed for Victoria and Abdul. This was meant to be Balmoral. And the most amazing craftsmen came in because the film crews just have extraordinary teams.
Yep, and budgets.
And and built this paneling to match our paneling. And we decided after they left that we wanted to keep 2 bits of it.
Yep.
And so you find that pieces will get added on to.
Yes.
It's important that it is living, and part of this comes to it. And we tell our visitors, that's a film prop.
That's right. And that's the story being added on. It doesn't just stop
It's
with,
not static.
with
It's not,
Victor,
It's not
presumably.
an aspect.
Right.
And you know, that's the joy of a private, independent, family lived-in home. We're always moving things. My archivist said, "Stop hanging pictures." I'm like, well, you know, that's
But
part
it's
of it.
fun. It's fun.
And when we put the paneling in, we had to take all the armor out. We had to
Right.
remove the paintings. But it gave us an opportunity because I told you the house came through Henry's grandmother. That's Hermione here. We decided to rehang the portraits to tell the story of that succession. So Victor Lytton, her father, was the heir and the owner of the estate.
Yes.
She never expected to take on the estate. She had 2 brothers. She sadly lost both of them, and the house came to her, but the title went to Neville, Victor's brother. All 3
Right.
of these portraits were painted by Neville. He was an amazing artist.
Incredible.
They're all painted by Neville, and so it's wonderful to have his work here, but also the family history.
all the heraldry here. Incredible. These stained glass.
All of this was put in by Edward Bulwer-Lytton. And
Okay.
again, he was fascinated with the family heraldry and the quartering of the family coats of arms and crests. And he wanted very much to remember and honor his mum.
Yeah.
So that's when so much of this came in. And it is magnificent.
When Edward Bulwer-Lytton inherited Knebworth from his mother Elizabeth in 1843, he commissioned the architect John Crace to redesign the Long Gallery and to reflect his mother's ancestry.
What's really cool
Amazing.
about this room is that it didn't have any heating or radiators until Henry and I put some in, which was about 15 years ago. It was very cold. It faces north. It was not hospitable, and so it kind of got left and forgotten. If it had been altered, like all the other rooms, I probably wouldn't have this Crace chandelier. I mean, how
Right.
magnificent is that?
It's so
And this extraordinary design of the fireplace with suspended ostrich eggs.
Oh my
and,
goodness.
incredible artistry and craftsmanship. So we're quite pleased that it wasn't the fashionable room, and it was
Yes.
an area where things were stored. But it is also an area that has a lot of restoration constantly needing. And I've recently just finished this wall. When
Right.
you look over here, you can see this was the state of it.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you can, Martha.
This is watering grass.
No.
And every time we've had the money to do something to the structure of the building, we've never had the budget to work on the interior decoration.
Right.
And it's only recently, because we've had some success with our film location work, with the Crown filming here, or The Gentleman, which is
Yeah.
out at the minute. What I've started doing is taking a very small percentage, like 5% of our filming revenue, so that I've got a tiny little budget and that I can actually do some work on some of the interiors. And that's how we've worked on the wallpaper. It's how we've stabilized these pelmets. These are the original pelmets. And they were in shreds. All of the tassels and the trim were hanging off. And again, I've managed to find someone with a bit of skill to help. Well, I've got peeling bits over here as well. Where I can, we try to do a few bits, but you know, there's always pieces that are falling off. And this room would have been 2.5 times longer in the original house. And this is where the ladies would have exercised out of the sunlight.
This was the Long Gallery.
Indeed, over a colonnade originally. And what we now find, Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton decided to make this very ornate.
Yeah.
She had a fight with the vicar. And if you look out the window, you can see the 12th century church, much older than the house. He had a great presence in this area, but so did Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, because she was running the estate. He and she fought over the tithe, the traditional tithe, which would normally have been 10% of all of the estate's drawings. And she felt it was a little bit unfair when she was growing pineapples in her greenhouse.
As you do.
Her treasured pineapples. And he wanted his share. And she said, enough is enough. And so she stopped attending his services. She started conducting services in this room. And everyone who worked for her, which was essentially the whole village and parish, needed to attend services here. So she left it that he was preaching to an empty church.
Oh my goodness.
This is interesting. My family, I don't know if you knew this, but my family come from a newspaper publishing background. My grandfather, my father had a wonderful series of newspapers, over 80 newspapers still today in America, which my half-sister Catherine is running. But this painting is of a printing press. Now, the printing press manuals in America, until very recently, had this very image on them.
No,
isn't that crazy?
That's incredible.
You get these weird little connections that often happen.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, it just blows your mind when you get these wonderful little nuggets.
But this is a wonderful room because it's so ornate but also precious, and you must be obviously incredibly careful. It's fragile.
It is.
Do you use it so often though?
It's a really good question. The house has to work hard for itself.
Yeah.
The room is used a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously it's used for our day visitors. And my mother-in-law always said she wanted it to be her bedroom. It would be a magnificent bedroom. But there isn't any plumbing up here.
Yeah, I don't think I could have it as a bedroom.
And remember, there weren't even radiators until quite recently.
Yeah. How extraordinary.
And beautiful,
And
beautiful views of the park.
Just
and
beautiful.
Yeah, it did incredible. So this brings you into the Red Passage, and this is where more of the formal bedrooms are. Pop in here, this is our Chinese bedroom. So many stately homes, it's traditional to have a Chinese bedroom. This is great fun.
Oh, wow.
And you have to get in this bed. So this would have been a bridal bed, and it flat packs, and it would travel with the bride and groom.
You're kidding me.
I'm completely
This
serious.
is so then.
But it's not very romantic, because I think you would have had an attendant sat there.
Who brought this into the family?
This was brought in by my parents-in-law. There was an old Chippendale bed in here, which was terribly uncomfortable, I gather, and one can't have an uncomfortable piece of furniture. And this is, of course, very comfortable and not creaky or rickety in any way.
No, it's super comfortable.
But this was put in to populate this wonderful Chinese room. Now, this is hand-painted Chinese wallpaper.
You're kidding me.
This is rather fun. We know that Charles Dickens stayed in this room. We believe that this inspired him when writing David Copperfield, and they were trying to come up with Jip's house. This was the design, so that when the dog went into his house and the little bells rang, it created a little bit of uncertainty for Jip.
Right.
But you can guess what it actually is.
Well, it's a padoga.
No, but what would they have put in it?
Oh, the ashes.
The potty.
The potty. I'm thinking I'm terribly wrong with that. Look at it.
It's a decorative potty holder.
It's a decorative potty holder. Here I was thinking that it was going to be some type of urn that went in
No,
there
I'm
with
afraid
ashes.
it's really quite basic.
All right. So who put this room together? Because it's quite exquisite.
Well, it's been a multi-generational effort.
Right.
You know, the wallpaper would have gone in 150 years ago, and then it would have been adjusted and evolved
and added
over
on.
time, including my parents-in-law.
Could be my favorite room so far.
The Hampden room, this one we designed as a nursery, because the nursery was upstairs, but when my parents-in-law opened the house on a regular basis in the 70s, and remember, they took it on at a time where it was deemed a lost cause.
Of course.
And my grandmother-in-law had tried to gift it to the nation, to the National Trust. We didn't have enough endowment, and they said no. She then tried to look for alternative uses. It was at one point to become the University of Hertfordshire. And there are great plans of that, which we have in our archives, but it didn't. And David and Chrissy said, we'd like to give it a go. So they moved in, buckets everywhere.
Yep.
Chrissy hand making curtains in various rooms. And they brought many of the nursery items downstairs.
Okay.
And which is important for our visitors to see. But these are things that were used. This doll's house belonged to Hermione's aunt. She always said it was a ridiculous doll's house because there weren't any stairs, and she couldn't quite understand how the dolls got up and down the stairs.
It's a fair point.
But it was hers.
Yes.
Her much-loved Steiff bear. And the cradle, which my daughter Morwenna slept in when we first moved back for a visit. And more of the Tudor wall stenciling here. Whenever we can do it, we'll show a little window of what's behind the plaster. And you can see it even when on the timbers.
This is incredible. And you uncovered that.
We've uncovered that during our restoration process. This is fun too, Julie. Put your hand gently on the seat of that.
This one?
Yep. Just press on where it's raised and hold it down. How much fun as a child.
Oh my goodness.
And
this would have been my favorite chair.
Isn't it magnificent? My mother-in-law, we started concerts over 50 years ago, and my mother-in-law was taking Frank Zappa through the house, as you do.
Yes,
and
you do.
She played that, and he said, no wonder you Brits are so crazy. You've had music coming out of your backsides from its infancy. But,
It's, okay, now this could be my favorite room.
Well,
just because there's so many sort of bits and bobs all telling a story, and that's what's wonderful.
This is Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton's room, and it is very much of a Regency style. I mean, to the point that you've got a door over here which goes nowhere. It's only there for balance and symmetry.
I see.
But that was
see.
important.
Yeah.
She was an artist. She painted her dogs and she painted her horses and you know, was very involved in her country life. Now, we've tried very hard to keep it as best as we can. Very recently, the silks that we used, Chrissy used her wedding gown silk for recovering the chair and the stool at one point. And we've had to replace some of the silks over the years.
But that's very clever to think of that.
It's trying to, yeah, regenerate, recycle. But the room is as close as it can be. And it is a room that is used for filming. It's been used in The Crown. It's been used in all sorts of different productions. It is a room that is quite cold, and yet it's closer to our living part as well.
Right.
And what we find often with film crews is they do feel a little bit of a presence in this room.
Yeah.
We've had visitors who've slept in this room. I won't put you here, don't worry. Okay. But we've had visitors who've slept in this room, woken up, feeling like a pressure's on their chest and a pressure is on their neck.
Right.
And it's unexplained.
Maybe she doesn't like it so much that they're occupying her
it
room,
could
considering
be.
that saying is this room, long occupied, and so on and so on.
Indeed.
Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton was a formidable presence at Knebworth. Her strong will was inherited by her great-granddaughter, Lady Constance Lytton, who made personal sacrifices for a greater cause. Jill Campbell, the archivist at Knebworth, explains more.
Hello. I'm Julie.
Hello, I'm Jill. Lovely to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
I'm the archivist here at Knebworth House.
I heard you have the job that I want one day. Can we just have a moment here? Is it just so much fun?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Can I ask you, Jill, before we get into what we're just about to cover, but being the archivist here at Knebworth, are there just thousands of letters, journals, diaries?
Yeah. Yes, there are, yeah. And they're not all catalogued yet, so
Right.
we're still working our way through them.
And what would you say is the most interesting thing you've found so far?
I don't think I can choose one. It's all interesting, yeah. But this collection we're going to look at is very interesting.
Right.
It's our suffrage connection, and it's relating to Lady Constance Lytton, who is the great-granddaughter of Mrs. Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton.
Right. I saw her bedroom.
That's
There we
right,
go. It's been
yeah.
very well preserved.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so this is her great-granddaughter.
So another strong woman in the
Very
family.
strong, a very strong woman. And she was actually, became involved in the fight for women's suffrage quite late on. She was 29
Okay.
when she became involved. And she joined the Women's Social and Political Union and became a suffragette in 1909.
Okay.
So quite late on in life to become involved.
See her sort of in some of these photos, just there walking. But that photo to me looks like she's in prison.
She is. She was in prison 4 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So her first imprisonment was only a month after she joined the suffragettes.
And was that just from protesting?
Yes, she went on a protest. She was arrested. She was sentenced to a month in Holloway prison. We're actually lucky enough in the archive to have this letter that Constance wrote to her brother Victor, the Earl of Lytton. And it's, as you can see, it's on Holloway notepaper. And it gives you all the rules that you have to follow to be able to write a letter in Holloway.
Oh my gosh. What?
And then you open it up and
she's
writes
written a letter.
A quick letter, March 1909, to her brother. She's just letting him know that she's okay.
Right. This is wonderful. And actually, you can actually read her handwriting there.
And she's still you know, supporting the cause. She's asking him to do things for her that she can't do while she's inside.
Yes. Just reading this, it says, I am filled with things I wish to say. I can't make speeches, but the breakfasts are delightfully informal, whereas you can explain how I hate the formalities and respectabilities of evening feasts. I certainly could not say a word at one of these. It would all seem unsympathetic to me, official, odious. It looks like there she felt, because everything there was more informal, she was able to speak her mind.
Yeah, and she's,
as a woman compared
she's
to
planning ahead for her release.
Yes.
Because once she's released, this is her first imprisonment. Everybody will want to know what
Yes.
happened, how did she get on. However, it didn't go as planned. She felt that she was being treated kinder than other prisoners because of who she was, because she was Lady Constance Lytton. Her brother was Victor, the Earl of Lytton,
right.
who was a politician. And she felt that she was getting privileged treatment compared to others. What I should have said was Constance has always had a bit of a weak heart from being a child. So she didn't keep the best health. When she went into the prison, she was given a medical test by doctors, and they picked up her heart. And unfortunately, once again, because of who she was given special treatment, she felt.
Right.
And she was actually released early because of her weak heart.
Oh my goodness.
The dedication of Lady Constance to the suffragette movement became ever more steadfast, even concealing her own identity.
She takes herself off to Manchester. She goes to local shops. She dresses herself as a working seamstress.
Yes.
And she calls herself Jane Wharton. She cuts her hair short.
She wears glasses.
She's got a little pince-nez on her nose, and she gets arrested as Jane Wharton.
Ah, I see.
She also secretly rejoined the WSPU as Jane Wharton. So they didn't know, no one knew. She did this all on her own. Gets arrested.
As Jane Wharton.
As Jane Wharton. This time, she isn't given a medical, presumably because she's just Jane Wharton, not Lady Constance Lytton.
I see.
So she doesn't get any privileged treatment this time.
So she's happy about this.
She's happy about this, yes, she is. But she decides to go on hunger strike.
And many of them did that, didn't they, the suffragettes?
Yeah, it was quite a new thing at the time.
Right.
She didn't eat for 4 days, and then they decided to start force feeding her, which is a particularly nasty, horrible treatment.
Awful.
And what happens in the end is that the press hear the rumours that Lady Constance Lytton is in prison in disguise, and they contact her sister Emily Lutyens,
Right.
who from the description says, yes, that's my sister. And Emily goes and they release her. She probably would have wanted to stay, but I think she was so ill by then, after 8 lots of force feeding.
Yes, and also with a weak heart, as you mentioned, right.
Yeah, so it took her quite a long time to recover after that. This is from Mrs. Emmeline Pethick Lawrence.
Okay.
And it's to Con's brother, Victor. And this is written regarding the Jane Wharton imprisonment.
Okay, where nobody knew who she was.
No one knew. She did it all on her own.
Yes.
And this is the union, the WSPU, writing to Victor and saying that they knew nothing of this. They didn't force her to do this. She did it by herself. She didn't tell them. And it's quite nice because they're also saying that they can sympathise with the family and how distressing it must have been for them.
So it says, the action of your sister, Lady Constance Lytton, has moved us all profoundly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it says that there's a admiration we feel for the family. Can I turn this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We are very, very sorry for this. And we too feel intensely with personal grief, but with it are other strong emotions of unthinkable reverence for this heroic woman and true saint.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that's a really nice letter for the family to receive.
Lady Constance continued to work for the suffragette movement and was arrested a 4th time, but it took its toll and she never fully regained her health. After suffering a stroke, determined to record her experiences, she wrote a book.
Prisons and Prisoners, Some Personal Experiences by Constance Lytton and Jane Wharton, spinster.
Yes.
I love that.
And this copy actually she gave to her mother, Edith.
Okay.
And it's got a lovely dedication there to...
Oh, for my darling mother, from her devoted Con. They call her Con.
Con, yeah. Everyone calls her Con. But as this was Edith's copy, she's written in the copy this, if you want to read that.
Yes. I mean, here we go. A human document, touchingly and beautifully written, and helps one to forgive her for following the leaders of such a movement in spite of the acute pain of the whole thing. So who writes that?
This is Edith, so Con's mum.
Con's
so
mum
yeah,
writes
she's
this.
written it in her copy and she's had it pasted in to the book, which is really lovely thing to have. Yeah.
But it's amazing what these women did because, of course, because of them, then there was that act that was passed by Parliament for women to vote. Is that right? So was she alive?
She was,
to
she
see that
was,
happen?
She was alive to see the 1918 Act go through, which she was very pleased about.
And remind me, the 1918 Act, what were the parameters around that?
That gave women over the age of 30 the vote.
Okay.
And they had to have certain property qualifications, be householders. But it still didn't give them completely equal rights to men.
No.
That didn't happen until 1928, and sadly Con died in 1923.
Okay.
But she saw the first results.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, how incredible! It's just so empowering. I think for women in particular to be able, and you as the archivist here, for you to be able to research this and in one sense be able to see what she experienced so that we could have that right to vote.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. See, that's why I want your job. Because it's so interesting. It's so interesting. Well, gosh, thank you, Jill, so much. This is wonderful to see this, to be able to look at this book, but also just to hear you tell the story of Con.
Thank you.
I always refer to her as Con now.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
brilliant.
She was always called Con by the family, so.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Lady Constance Lytton died at the age of only 54, but her legacy lives on. She is buried in the mausoleum in the park at Knebworth, with his epitaph inscribed in stone. Endowed with a celestial sense of humor, boundless sympathy, and rare musical talent, she devoted the later years of her life to the political enfranchisement of women and sacrificed her health and talents in helping to bring victory to the cause. Knebworth House was transformed in the 19th century, from its red brick Tudor origins to the Victorian Gothic masterpiece we see today. The drama and flamboyance of Knebworth's architecture has become synonymous with the record-breaking live music events held here since the 1970s. At Knebworth, each generation makes its mark, and Martha leads me to a room where Knebworth's rock history meets royal history.
So here we are in the Queen Elizabeth room. Now, what's interesting about this room is, you know, it's called the Queen Elizabeth Room. Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate the room as it would have been when Queen Elizabeth I came to visit.
I see.
Now, he painted on the fireplace there, 1588, because he assumed that she came during the Spanish Armada. But through our research and looking beyond in the National Archives, we know that she came earlier than that. We think it was 1566, 1568, come for dinner, but then came to stay for 4 days in 1571. So Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate that feel.
So that's what he did.
Indeed.
So and also the ceiling.
The ceiling is magnificent.
Yeah.
And the ceiling is relatively new. I say relatively new, but this was added, and it has Robert Lytton's insignia up there as well.
Right.
So this would have been added post Edward Bulwer-Lytton.
Okay, so
The oldest part of the room is actually this stool. This is a Tudor stool.
Okay.
And that would have been very common.
right.
And that is of the period. But this room, we use it all the time. It's a principal guest room. We've had all sorts of interesting people to stay. Mick Jagger slept in that bed.
I
You
mean,
know,
we
in
are.
1976 when they were playing in
That's right.
you know, the park just around.
This is the rock and roll
Yeah,
historic house,
absolutely,
obviously.
absolutely. But
Oh
being
my
a
goodness.
family home, when my mother-in-law was stripping the bed after he'd left, she actually found a little, and they are little, pair of knickers. So, of course, what does she do? She puts them in an envelope, sticks them in the safe. My husband has framed them. They're on the wall in there.
No.
Well, what else are we going to do with
That's
them?
brilliant.
You know, you've got a 4-poster bed, so why not have a 4-poster bath? Wonderful to have this working with the room, but of course when we had Oasis in '96 and they were staying in a caravan, we had a call from the promoter asking if Liam could come up and have a bath. So of course he can have a bath.
Absolutely.
So we, you know, shut the door from the house guests, let them in to use the bath. My father-in-law comes up to bring him a bottle of champagne, as you do, the rock star in the tub, who has to perform again that night. And later in the documentary, Liam is saying that a liveried footman brought him a bottle of champagne. Of course, it was my father-in-law, Lord Cobbold.
That's brilliant.
But a great welcome. But come through
That
and
is
have a
brilliant.
look at our most famous pants in the house.
I cannot believe this.
Because what else are we going to do but keep them?
And
Frame
frame them. Oh my gosh. Do you know, I saw the Rolling Stones in concert, so this means even
You know,
more to me.
a bright red pair of vintage 70s pants
I mean, they're fantastic.
from the Stones in 76.
But
yeah.
they're itty bitty.
Well, you know,
I mean,
he's a petite
he
performer.
He is a petite performer. How brilliant and lovely that it really is works well with the wallpaper.
It matches. A gothic red.
How fun.
Rock concerts, events, and filming opportunities all help generate funds to restore and repair the house. I sat down with Martha to hear more about how she juggles managing a house the scale of Knebworth and being president of historic houses.
So this is the picture gallery. It's also referred to as the Long Gallery, and this is our drawing rooms. We've had The Crown filmed here, and Queen Mary, not the real one, was sat in here listening to the King's speech.
How
But
fun.
it's still a family home.
Yes.
It's still our family drawing room. Would you like some tea?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Now, I have, of course, so many burning questions for you because it's wonderful, can I just say, coming to visit a historic house, not just because it's Knebworth, but because it's Knebworth and one of the custodians is an American. But I have heard every now and again, Martha, a y'all.
Absolutely.
So remind me what state you are from.
I was born in Suffolk, Virginia, and I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So you know, a lot of the South, a lot of
Right.
Southern influence
Yeah.
there. And Tuscaloosa is where the University of Alabama is based, and so actually quite a cosmopolitan Southern town. And my mom was fantastic at exposing me to art and antiques, and my parents very supportive of us traveling and
Right.
furthering our education.
How did you meet Henry and here you are?
I know it's quite a tale. We met when we were children. My mother published a publication called Antiques Monthly and Horizon magazine for the performing arts, and she created a tour experience called the Delisle Grey Journeys with Bill Delisle, Viscount Delisle from Penshurst Place.
Right.
And at the time, they had the idea that she could pull together groups of Americans who were very interested in history, many looking back at their ancestry, but fascinated and wanting to support heritage here in England.
Yes.
So she would take a group to have dinner with Lord Delisle and his family at Penshurst, or they came here to Knebworth with my parents-in-law and many, many other houses.
Right.
But they got on incredibly well, made fast friends, realized they had sons of a similar age. My husband was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. His father was working in a bank in New York at the time. And so she thought it would be fun. My mother-in-law thought it would be fun for him to see a little bit of America. So
Right, because he was born there.
off
Yeah.
he was sent to Alabama, of all places.
Of all places.
Of all
It's
places.
Brilliant.
So my father taught him how to water ski, of course, on Lake Tuscaloosa. We took him up to Washington, D.C., and gave him a little dose of America so he could see it. And that's been a lifelong love. We've been married 37 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Incredible. So 37 years, but when did you take over the running and you know, of Knebworth and becoming, you know, when did that change, that shift happen for you that you and Henry
We always
were here?
knew that it was a responsibility. We always knew that we needed to come back and assist either Henry's parents or hand the baton over, accept
Right.
it from them and carry on that tradition. Henry's father was quite keen for us to come back a little bit sooner than we did. But I was pregnant with Edward at the time in Los Angeles, so which is where we moved initially. We married and moved to Los
see.
Angeles because Henry was working as a screenwriter in California.
So did you get married here at
No,
Knebworth?
we got married in Alabama.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Martha, I mean.
Christ Episcopal Church, Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
It's so brilliant.
I know, it is
So
fantastic,
you
our
knew,
family church.
in one sense, you knew that you would end up here. So you moved here, and what year was that when you moved
We
to
moved back
Knebworth?
here in '93,
Okay.
and we swapped houses in 2000.
Okay.
And I started working with the estate in '93.
Right.
Initially in our catering and our sales and marketing and helping in a different way.
Just learning
And
the
then-
ropes, really.
Exactly.
By the time Martha and her family moved into the house, Knebworth was on the map as the home of classic rock concerts. This success had developed from the pressing need in the 1950s and beyond for historic houses to diversify and open their doors to the public to survive.
It was a very tricky time. Often it was that the taxation death duties, we had a series of 3 death duties in a row here.
Oh,
and that's
my
very
goodness.
crippling.
Yeah.
And much of Knebworth Estate was taken over for the development of the new town of Stevenage. And I'm delighted to be part of Stevenage.
Right.
But that was 10,000 acres taken on compulsory purchase at agriculture rate.
Right.
So you have all these things that are happening which are making it less and less viable.
Right.
So
of course.
it was imperative, I think, that many owners started to share best practice and experiences in trying to find a way forward.
Yes.
And that was created through a committee, initially through the British Tourist Authority, but ultimately became the Historic Houses Association.
Yes.
And my father-in-law was one of the founding members of the Historic House Association. So it's quite, you know, you can see where they shared information
Yeah.
on opening as a safari park or opening for filming or opening for day visitors.
Or a motor museum, Bewley.
Exactly. Bewley and the Motor Museum are amazing, what they've done there, and the Safari Park at Longley,
Yep.
and you look at Goodwood. But these were all integral members to that infancy
Yes.
of the Historic House Association, and they very much were inspired by that, but they also learnt from each other.
Yes.
They learnt from each other about best practice, but also the pitfalls.
Because this was new.
Yep.
That no,
And
historic
everybody was
houses-
hands-on. We're still hands-on.
Yes,
But my
yes,
mother-in-law
we are.
was literally dressed as a wench serving in this very room a banquet to paying customers.
Right.
And made all the costumes as well. And cooked all of the food. And that's the sort of hands-on level that they did and that you had to do.
You had to. And so were your in-laws thinking, we're part of this small group to begin with that's creating this organization, which we'll get onto in a second, called Historic Houses, at that time, Historic Houses Association, but we need to do something different. And is that where the idea of the concerts came to be?
The concerts are it's a great story, that, because we're celebrating 50 years of hosting music here at Knebworth this year.
So that's 1974.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they received a letter from an event organizer, shall I call him, and they honestly thought it was a Renaissance fair. It was actually the Bucolic Frolic. We actually had some great American acts on it. You know, the Allman Brothers, the Doobie Brothers.
My
I know,
gosh,
the Doobie
love
Brothers.
them.
That was my first album I ever bought. And you know, it's incredible that that's what it evolved to. But they were open-minded and they were free-spirited people,
Right.
and they were willing to give it a go, and they had fun with it. They
Yes.
enjoyed hosting the acts. You know, we needed to turn it into a little bit more of a commercial business.
Yes.
When Henry and I took it over. But it wouldn't be here without them. They came up with ways to facilitate, to make it happen. And we're making, you know, we're just taking it that step further.
That leads me to historic houses. This wonderful association where your father-in-law was really one of the founding fathers. And you now, Martha, are the president. You're the first woman president and the first American president.
Indeed.
And this is a, you know, let's think about it. This is a British organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that in itself is a little bit daunting, but my goodness, what an honor and a privilege.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about also historic houses, the association, that it's very different from, and me as the American, I had to learn this quite quickly, very different from National Trust or English Heritage.
Indeed. So there are a lot of differences, and when one looks back at the National Trust and English Heritage, they are phenomenal in what they do, and in many cases, they are the ones that sort of drew the line in the sand of which we all lead up to learn from. We still use the National Trust book on housekeeping and how to do restoration and various things on chattels today. But the National Trust and English Heritage are government owned and government controlled, and they have many different aspects and opportunities than we do. As an example, they don't pay business rates.
Right.
They don't have inheritance taxation. We're there to support independent heritage properties. That is houses, gardens, and parks. We're there to support the properties, support the members, to ensure they have the information that they need to run their homes and their businesses, because it can be a little bit isolating when you take on a property like this. You know, you're coming in from a different industry, most likely.
Yes.
And while it may have been your family home, most of us have to go out and earn a living elsewhere before it's your turn to take it on. And so it can be a bit of a weird situation. And we offer that non-judgmental environment. So whether in today's world you log on to the forum site and you can ask a question about where do you find a Victorian bathtub plug, or how do you clear a hopper head that's integral to two different roof structures and lines. But someone will have done it before.
Yes, exactly.
And we're all happy and willing to share that information. We're all so supportive, as my father-in-law found, in trying out these ideas and learning from one another. So we can be very supportive, very nurturing as co-owners, but as an association, we can streamline the government guidelines to support any planning initiatives, to help them along their way, to ensure that there is a great forum of networking, both with other members, but within government, and to make sure that their voices are heard. And with our visitor members, it's engaging with them. It's making sure that they understand and feel a part of what we're doing to protect the nation's heritage. It can happen many different ways. We have a wonderful magazine that comes out quarterly, both for our house members and our visitor members.
Yes. Right, because you can, of course, become a visitor member.
You can.
And you've got access to over
300 houses, gardens, and
houses
parks.
and gardens. But if I'm sitting here watching this and I'm thinking, well, I can't possibly get to the UK for various reasons, but I do want to support historic houses and become, let's say, an international member.
Absolutely.
It's still vitally important,
It is.
and there's lots of benefits.
And the magazine's also available digitally. So it's everything can be accessed from afar or once here as well. And one can
Exactly.
visit when they're here, but also engage from afar and have this little door open.
Yes. There's online lectures, there's online
Absolutely.
workshops. You can hear from different homeowners, the restoration projects that they're doing or what they're
And you
undertaking
can engage
next.
with them directly as well. It acts as a portal.
Yes.
So it just opens up many, many doors, 1,500 in fact. Work, an amazing resource and such a support.
Yeah.
And also an honor and a privilege to help work and fight for the causes that we're
That's
all
right.
representing.
That's right.
It's a wonderful circle of support.
Yeah.
Support, engagement, enthusiasm, and love of heritage.
fun.
And a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and a couple Americans too.
A few Americans scattered in there for good measure.
Spending time with Martha, and like every historic home across the UK, it's clear Knebworth is a house in need of constant repair and attention. And Martha's enthusiasm and delight in preserving this building for the future is inspiring.
The tapestries are so magnificent, and this is a 17th century Flemish tapestry. It's a wonderful heirloom to have, and my grandmother-in-law took it with her to retire at a lake house which was built for her when my parents-in-law moved in, and of course enjoyed it immensely there, and then it came back when she moved again. We have it, you know, secured in a way that it is safe for it to be enjoyed.
Yes.
But what you find is the weight of it. You can see as it pulls down, we've got some little stress marks. And so it does need constant assessment. You have to watch for moth damage.
Yeah.
You've got to watch for light discoloration. And the responsibility is just, you know, it is never ending, but it's too beautiful not to have enjoyed for everyone to be able to look at it.
The main project for me at Matberton is we have some fantastic 18th century tapestries as well from Belgium. They are in dire need of restoration. You know, the end of one has been bitten by one of the dogs from the past.
A lot of the colorings that were used came from natural products. Sometimes they're even insect blood. All sorts of different natural products were used. And of course, in a modern world, even then I expect, but the moths are attracted to it. And once you start getting light damage, it's trying to find out how far do you go to stabilize it?
Yes.
How far are you going to restore it? Because actually you're not wanting to recreate it.
No.
You're wanting to maintain it and hold it.
Exactly.
Because this is the reality. Things are, you know, they are changing, they're decomposing, they're beginning to deteriorate. So you have to look and notice. And I keep looking at the crack above it as well. And, you know, you just notice these things when you can.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out what's going on behind it and fix it as best you can or hold it.
And exactly. And also with these historic houses, and they are, many of them, they are quite vast. And even though 3/4 have been pulled down, it's still big. And you can't see every single crack or leak or...
And often you lift that lid of that project and you realize it's not just a crack. There's death watch beetle, there's dry rot, there's watering grass. There could be any number of things going on. So it is important. We have to be proactive. We have to just jump in there.
And it's not just the interiors at Knebworth which have undergone major restoration projects. Outside, in the blustery spring sunshine, we explore the Victorian fantasy world which adorns the building.
I have to say, I don't think I've seen so many gargoyles on a building in my life.
Gargoyles, griffins, dogs, you know, all sorts of beasts, because they would, you know, a lot of them were fantastical beasts.
Right.
This is why, you know, when Harry Potter came here to do a product launch with us, that we fit the bill, and we were just so honored to be the British launch of Harry Potter.
Of course.
You know, how cool is that?
So cool.
But you know, this end of the house was the first part that we did the restoration on in the 1980s. Unfortunately, this is also where we had damage recently, and this is the northwest corner, which we had to put 6 underpins, literally money in the ground.
Yep, that nobody can see.
Nope, because we had a Victorian turret literally twisting away from the Tudor structure. And my colleague went up into a cherry picker, and he could put his entire hand through the crack of the building to the inside of the building.
Oh my gosh.
The drain pipe was coming off, and it ricocheted all the way this way and around the corner through the library into our circular stairs. Come around. This is one of the more recent restorations, and we had to do this in 2020. So we managed to get a little job done after Liam Gallagher performed, but this was a monumental task, this corner.
Of course.
And frustrating because it was already restored.
Okay.
It was already restored, and the clay underneath with climate change has expanded and contracted. And the Victorian foundation had a differential from the Tudor.
Right.
So windows had to come out.
Oh my gosh,
We've
did
got,
they?
Absolutely.
So you had scaffolding all the way up,
all the way
presumably.
up,
Yep.
and all the way around. And we've got the sort of new shape of Knebworth, as the architect had to explain to me when I said, can't that be a little bit straighter? And he's like, no, the building has moved. We can carry on with the render replacement and with that decorative design, but this is the new shape of Knebworth.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this all had to be rebuilt.
And you can see that it has.
In the windows, that they're not actually that symmetrical anymore, which is it's a shame. But you know, I don't think they ever really were.
I'm just noticing, again, because there's so many gargoyles, griffins, but I'm noticing, are those bats? Like
those are bats on barrels.
Eating their tails?
Indeed, yes. It's quite a trick, isn't it?
Okay.
So that is a pun on the family name Lytton. With the bats on the barrels. Do you remember the Flittermouse with the bat, and the ton is a barrel? And so these were Victorian. This was very ornate Gothic architecture that was on all the pier caps, but slightly concerned the Victorians with their purist views that it was maybe a little bit racy, and they let them decay on these ends. So we only have it there.
Okay.
And we've worked over here on the Central West, but you know, we just have to do what we can do. And in replacing these carved beasts up here with their lanyards, their halberds.
Yes, exactly. And
they're facing west because that's keeping away the evil west. It's warning any evil that might be coming from the west to keep away. It's a guarded building.
And when was this done again?
The top bit, 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do these beautiful columns, carved columns. We were all the way around them, and there literally was not a penny to spare. We come in with the great love and passion to save, restore, maintain these buildings and keep them accessible.
I could just stay out here all day.
It's very deep, isn't it?
Especially now that the sun's out.
Yeah.
And just, you know, you could just stare at one spot and you would be taken in.
Since the 1950s, an inconspicuous tower in the courtyard stood empty. In 2020, a major restoration program began to restore the building.
We believe that the design would have had the flooring in each level, but with a straight ladder, like a loft ladder going up that you would climb up, rather than this circular stair. But of course, this works better for a modern visitor, including little passing points that one could bump into. But we've left all of the original features as best as we could. So we have the fireplaces on each level.
Why were there fireplaces here?
Because, of course, the watchman, there's no heating in here. And the watchmen needed a place to sit, to stay warm. They were in here for long periods of time to make their tea and coffee.
Yes.
And make it just habitable, really.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's today I can see why you would need a fireplace.
And all of this oak came from our estate. We found a tree in the woodland. We picked one out, cut it down, and cut the timber to shape. That is reclaimed iron balustrades, which we made from the old estate fencing. A lot of estates in England, you'll recognize, probably have some at Mapperton.
Yes, yes.
But it surrounds the fields and many areas of the woodland. Most is decomposed and collapsed. So we salvaged what we could and reused it.
So you've really upcycled so much here. It's amazing.
This entire house and estate has been built on upcycling, recycling, reusing. Bricks and slates and things were always reused.
Right,
so
yes.
It's not a new thing.
Yeah,
It's the correct thing to do.
Exactly.
You know. And putting in windows in the wall slits, I don't think there would have been a window like this. And it does work, you can open it if you want to, and even shoot an arrow out of it. But do look and make sure you don't get a gardener first. But this is the design, and that's how they would peek through. And that's why you need a fire.
Is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've kept the original arrow slits.
Absolutely.
How clever.
Yeah.
That is so clever. So this was finished when?
We finished this in March 2020, which of course was right when the pandemic hit. And
Right.
so opening up access to a new area, and then we were shut down
yeah.
by the pandemic and all of the legislation that followed through.
Yes.
So it was a very frustrating time for us. We couldn't have visitors in here for another 2 years.
Right.
So it was a real shame.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's here.
But it's here.
And it's
here.
open.
We all
and you
survived.
now can
We're here.
experience it. And you can now come and play Watchman.
It's brilliant. Okay, so how many more steps do we have to go?
Well, there's 55 in total, so I'd say you've got another 21 to
Okay.
do. So here we are at the top of the Watchman's Tower.
Yes, I feel like I should say a quote right now. It was a dark and stormy night.
Indeed, indeed. Edward Lytton had good calls for coming up with that famous
Wow,
line.
he certainly did. Oh my
But this
goodness.
is spectacular, isn't it? Because this gives you the vantage point of the whole park.
Wonderful.
And one of the things we wanted to achieve was to give visitors this vantage point, this view, but to understand the heritage of the house going back to the Saxon times.
Yes.
So we created an app, the Watchman's app, which is a free app, anyone can download it. And it gives you the opportunity to look at the house, to look at the park and the church, and to learn about it. So you can look at the
Incredible.
Norman times, the Saxon times, you can look at the Victorian times,
Right.
the modern times now, and you can see how the house has changed. We believe there was always been a structure here because it's written about in the Doomsday Book.
Okay.
And it would have been called Knebworth. So similar,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
similar to this. We think it was probably the camp of King Knebba,
Okay.
but
Right.
you know, it would have been a wooden structure of some type, and obviously none of that would have
Yes.
survived.
Right.
But this would have been part of a village settlement. So on this app, which we created because we couldn't open, you can experience it and move around in virtual time and look at it in different time periods.
Right.
So very
Oh,
cool.
that is very cool. There's a ladder up on the roof, so
Indeed.
you're having works done
We're
up there.
always, you know, we started when my father-in-law moved into the house. He created a 10-phase program of restoration.
Wow.
And the first phase happened in the late 80s, 1990s. That was the northern end of the house.
Okay.
And we've been slowly moving our way around. This bit here, the 3 chimneys and the 2 turrets, were our most recent restoration, and that was completed after the 2022 concert with Liam Gallagher. But that's what it's about. You make the money, you sink it straight back in.
Yeah, but that's it. You bring the visitors in, you've got to put it
And
to
you
a
do as
project.
much as you
Yeah.
can.
The watchtower here, though, it was used
Yes.
to literally be
Yes.
a watchtower.
Yeah.
Is that right?
The last time we have a record of it being used was 1950, when my grandmother-in-law remembers as a child a little chit of paper, as she would call it,
Right.
being placed at her father's breakfast setting. And
Yeah.
that was the watchman's report, and he would report on mainly wildlife. We didn't
Right.
have the marauding, you know, Danes coming
Yeah,
down
yeah,
at that
yeah,
point, but it did happen at some point.
Yes,
but
it did. The marauders
for
did come.
Victor, it would have
Yeah.
been deer, owls, munkjack, that sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
But you can see we've still got a lot to do. You know, the
It's-
last estimation was about £14 million to complete the southern roofs, all the
Right.
southern roofs, and the structural repairs that we have.
Yeah. And
So
that's what these
we've come a
historic
long
houses
way.
are. It's just
Yeah.
never ending. But,
Never ending.
You know, we
do
as-
what you can.
You do what you can as the generation
Absolutely.
that is currently the custodian of the
Yeah.
house. You do what you can in the hopes that when you pass
Yep.
it on to the next, that
Yep.
it's in better shape than when you
And
took
my
it on.
ambition, I really hope in my tenure that I can get it off the Heritage at Risk list. We're still on the Historic England Heritage at
you?
Risk. Yeah.
I
we are.
didn't know
Yeah,
that.
we are.
And
So
why is
it's
that?
because we have £14 million of structural
my
repairs still to do.
gosh.
It's a benefit in one element, in the fact that it is raising attention
Yeah.
to the situation.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's quite
it's
an
still at risk,
obligation.
yeah.
And you know, I would love, that would be my ambition. I would
Yeah,
very
in
much
your
like to
tenure.
get it off before
Oh, gosh,
one of my
Martha, I
children
didn't
takes
know
it on.
that.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Wow.
So it's a constant battle,
Yeah.
and it's one that we've been working on for decades, well, for centuries.
I actually think that you'll be able to do it with your American spirit. Your
can-do
and
attitude,
the can-do, and
the don't give up.
and the don't give up, and the American work ethic. I mean,
Yeah.
we do need to kind of
Yeah.
pat ourselves on the back for that.
Yeah. Well,
we do have
it is a
some really-
24/7 job, but it is an honor and a privilege.
It is.
And it is really, really quite a cool
my gosh.
experience.
It is, and it's. Thank you for taking me up here because I just been able just to see it in all its glory from here, but also to be able to understand just looking at the restoration work that is constantly going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
The beautiful 28 acres of formal gardens at Knebworth largely date from the Victorian and Edwardian eras, but some features date back centuries.
Okay, Marty, what am I hugging right now? It's enormous.
So this is our oldest oak tree on the estate. This one dates back 360 years, the oldest recorded tree that we have.
Right.
However, I have been speaking to some tree specialists, and I think we've got some older trees within the estate as well, up to 450 years possibly.
Right.
But on record, this is the oldest oak tree that we have.
Record. Wow, she is wonderful.
It's a beautiful example.
Absolutely beautiful, and looks very healthy. She has just a lovely spot here as well, doesn't she?
Yeah, it really is. It's a perfect spot for it. It's absolutely beautiful.
How wonderful. So you're quite new being head gardener, is that right?
Yes, I've been here just over a month now, so yeah, early days.
Wow.
But, I'm picking up things really quickly. I'm really interested in the history of this place anyway.
Yes.
So yeah, it's quite easy for me to get inspired about the different stories and the different characters over the years. So now we've just walked through the green garden and into the gold garden. So,
and with the golden sun. Thank you, Marty. I'm so happy. So this is wonderful. So tell me a little bit about this area of the garden.
Okay, so this is the gold garden, and we've got predominantly hot colours within this area. We've got this beautiful water feature, which is just giving that lovely sound of water as you wander through this area. So Robert, the first Earl of Lytton, he almost bankrupted the estate with the amount of work that he completed. He spent so much money on plants and installing so many different features throughout the garden. He almost bankrupted the estate. So after him, his son Victor, he came in and he basically looked at it and thought, we need to simplify what we're doing here to be able to keep our costs down. So he enlisted the help of Edwin Lutyens.
Right.
And Edwin Lutyens came in, and he actually was his brother-in-law at the time.
Okay.
So that was quite helpful, seeing as he was such a celebrated architect.
Right.
But also an incredible landscape designer. He looked around and he thought, I'm going to create a series of rooms as we work our way down the garden.
Okay.
So this is the gold garden. We have like hot colours within this space. The green garden, we'll work our way through to the brick garden, which has got these beautiful pastel colours.
It's so wonderful, and just even, that view is really spectacular because you're able to see the domes and the battlements and some of the griffins and gargoyles and just, a powerful house.
The impact that Sir Edward Bulmer Lytton had on this house was incredible. I mean, the Gothic styling that you see now is really what sets this house apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And standing apart from the house in the surrounding parkland is St. Mary's Church, where generations of the Lytton family forever rest.
Now watch your step into this ancient old church.
Yes, reminds me.
Is St.
the
Mary's.
age.
And of course this is much older than Knebworth House. This goes back to 1190. The bell tower was a later Victorian addition, but the body, the nave of the church here is, it's ancient, it's phenomenal. But we have regular active services here. And we have memorials here,
goodness.
lists of those who gave their lives for the Great War. With the War Memorial, which we celebrate and honor every year, the church opened up and did an ingenious thing to remember all the different fallen individuals, but even up to a modern day, and now have this active archives, which we've been able to help them with, and getting more information from the community too, to come and understand the loss and the sacrifice, and to remember.
And to
Which is
remember.
what it's all about. So there are lots of memorials, because this has been the family church for a long, long time. It's a Church of England church, but the family have worshipped here for many, many centuries. And so remember Pamela, Victor's wife, and of course remembering Victor himself here. We do have the mausoleum in the park as well, which Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton built originally for her mother and for herself after that famous tithe argument. But there are other more modern inhabitants as well. Robert and Edith are there. Constance Lytton is there, the famous suffragette.
Yes.
So this brings us down into the Lytton Chapel, and this is where many of the 17th century family members are entombed and remembered.
Right.
And you can see as well with the different names when the house passed through the female line, and you can see Robinson Lytton and Strode, other names that have been brought in over time, but always with Lytton intact.
But lovely to see this special, special place.
What a special place Knebworth is. And it's been an absolute joy to spend time with Martha and explore the history of this spectacular building.